But, sir, at the end of the day, when you're reclining on your balcony and you've had some drinks and things are hazy and the sun is setting, doesn't the horse look green?
Savage.
Michael Savage. Afternoons 3 to 7 on Talk 910 KNEW and online at 910KNEW.com.
Coming up next from San Fran Freak Show, The Savage Nation from Talk 910 KNEW.
With Michael Savage, I can relate.
The Savage Nation. Weekday afternoons 3 to 7. Talk 910 KNEW.
Warning. The Michael Savage Show contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised.
And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation. Here is Michael Savage.
Well, here's what we've been talking about in part today. I asked you, have you met someone recently who seemed as they've been lobotomized? In going through your day-to-day life, have you met someone who acted as if they had been completely brainwashed by the leftist lies of Obama? Someone who seemed as if they had undergone an lobotomy? Where did you meet them? What was your experience with the lobotomized? Now, if you've met someone like this, what are the primary characteristics of someone who's been lobotomized? How do you respond to them? Or are you able to suggest an appropriate method of treating an lobotomy? Where do those who have had an lobotomy tend to congregate? At bookstores, coffee shops, hybrid car dealerships, socialized radio? Are we going to have socialized radio? Because, let me tell you, they're coming at us every which way to Moscow. I've told you on the show before that although the so-called fairness doctrine may be dormant, the neo-Marxists in the White House and the Congress are now concocting new and nefarious methods of trying to destroy conservative talk radio. The latest is the appointment of Mark Lloyd, the FCC's new diversity director. You see, Lloyd authored a paper for the far left of Center for American Progress entitled, quote, The Structural Imbalance of Political Talk Radio. And here's what this genius wrote. Any effort to encourage more responsive and balanced radio programming will first require steps to increase localism and diversify radio station ownership to better meet local and community needs. In other words, Radio Free Zimbabwe. In other words, the government will impose affirmative action on radio station ownership. But it doesn't end there. The genius Lloyd continues, quote, We suggest 3 ways to accomplish this. Restore local and national caps on the ownership of commercial radio stations. Ensure greater local accountability over radio licensing. Require commercial owners who fail to abide by enforceable public interest obligations to pay a fee to support PBS. So this clown wants to forbid successful station owners from becoming successful. And if they don't play leftist shows on their stations, then he'll force them to support radical left-wing programming on NPR. It's pure communism. Last week, Senator Charles Grassley sent a letter to the FCC voicing his concerns about this clown Lloyd's plans to destroy Michael Savage's conservative talk radio show. Grassley said, quote, Taken together, these statements represent a view that the FCC needs to expand its regulatory arm further into the commercial radio market. You see, it's an attempt by Obama to socialize radio and the media in the same way he's trying to socialize health care. Now, by standing up and making enough noise, conservatives have made the White House retreat on socialized medicine. And if we do the same thing with the attempts to make it government radio, Obama will have no choice but to stop this and fire this dummy. Government radio, GR, that's what you're going to get under the Obama minions. Now, socialized testing has failed. Well, the results of the standardized school tests in California have come out, and in spite of the billions and billions of dollars poured into racist programs to try to give minorities the advantage over whites, the results are pretty much the same. Asians and whites do about 30% better than blacks and Hispanics. This is actually the fault of liberals who have focused a generation of children on race rather than success. They've poisoned the minds of children with the injuries of the past rather than the opportunities of the present. And so an entire generation lives in the past, and an entire generation believes they cannot succeed because they've been taught that the white man is keeping them down. Well, it doesn't seem to work that way with Asians. After all, they're not Caucasian. How come Asians do so well if the white man is so bad? It has nothing to do with race, okay? Shame on you leftist teachers of California. The youth you teach will never succeed until you stop filling their minds with hatred and racism. You've heard me talk about Obama's socialist policies. I'm not the only one. Joining us today to help point out these warning signs of this administration's communist leanings is Wayne Allen Root.
Thanks, Michael. Have you read the headlines this past week? Obama has proposed trillions of dollars in new taxes, trillions of dollars of irresponsible, unsustainable new spending, with no way to pay for it all except to literally wipe out small businessmen and women and wipe out the upper middle class of America, to enslave our children and grandchildren with a mountain of debt and heavy taxes for a lifetime. It is plainly and simply the very definition of socialism. Let's say it out loud. Obama is a socialist. There isn't any need to debate anymore. No point in even arguing. If liberals and biased liberal media won't face facts, I'm going to put the facts right in their face. Up close and personal, Jeff Foxworthy style. You see, Jeff Foxworthy literally defined rednecks. He didn't leave any doubt. All you could do was laugh and say, Jeff hit that one right on the nose. Well, I'm going to now define a socialist. And when I'm done, you can only cry and say, wow, Wayne sure described that Obama fellow.
Exactly.
If you want government to take over business, banks, car makers, Wall Street, hijack the entire economy, you might be a socialist. If you think it's fine and dandy for government to decide CEO salaries, to hire and fire CEOs, to pick board of directors of private companies, you might be a socialist. If you think 32 czars appointed by Obama can run the American economy by committee, even though few, if any, have ever run a business, and if you think it's okay to appoint a car czar who admits publicly he knows nothing about cars, you might be a socialist. If you want to give away as much as $100 million of taxpayer money to GM and Chrysler just so that they can go bankrupt anyway, but then hand the company to the unions that bankrupted them in the first place, you might be a socialist. If you want to pass cap and trade and convert America to a green economy to create millions of jobs, even though Spain is the greenest economy in all of Europe, and they have 18% unemployment, the highest in all of socialist Europe, you might be a socialist. If you support universal health care, even though a majority of Americans are happy with their present health plan, and government is the one that has screwed up health care in the first place with overregulation, even though government has run the U.S. Postal Service into bankruptcy and run Amtrak into bankruptcy, and the public school system is in shambles and loses tens of billions per year, and Medicare and Medicaid threaten to bankrupt the entire economy with their gigantic losses, all run by government, and government has run up $5.3 trillion in unfunded liability just for pensions and free health care for government employees, and you think government is the answer to cutting the cost of health care, you might be a socialist. If you think government can save money on health care, even though the exact same people that run government have brought you an almost $2 trillion deficit and almost $100 trillion in debt, almost double the world GDP, all the money made in the world each year, that's our debt. And despite the fact that government loses money at every department and every agency at every level every year since inception, you might be a socialist. And you're definitely an idiot.
Ha ha.
If you propose paying for universal health care with taxes on the health benefits of every employee in America except union employees, you might be a socialist. If you propose paying for health care by punishing the rich with a 5% surcharge on their incomes, even though that same group you are punishing, small business owners, already pays virtually all the taxes and creates all the jobs in America, you might be a socialist. If you support a VAT tax, just like socialist Europe, that puts a deadly tax on every product in America at every level of production and purchase on top of all our other state, federal, and local taxes, you might be a socialist. If you are in favor of bailouts of certain companies and certain industries who just happen to give you large campaign contributions, all with taxpayer money, and you don't even think to ask the permission of taxpayers, and you don't or won't disclose who got the money or how much, and you don't even say please or thank you, even though it's our money paying for it all in the first place, and you never even bother to read the 1,000-plus page bailout bill delivered to you only hours before you voted yes, you might be a socialist. If you call it a tax cut when you give a welfare check to people that never pay taxes in the first place, you might be a socialist. If you think all your friends deserve a government job for life and obscene salaries far higher than the private sector and bloated pensions for life and health care for life and a guaranteed job for life, you may be a socialist. And by the way, if after all that, you're a Columbia University economics professor and you ever gave a student named Barack Obama an A, you might be a socialist. And if you think it's perfectly fine to appoint a Supreme Court justice for life who thinks that a Latina woman can make a better decision from the bench than a white male simply because of the color of her skin, you might be a racist. Ladies and gentlemen, I think it's safe to say our country, our economy, our education system, and capitalism itself